I'm Kathryn Flashner, and this is The Truth Is, a podcast about discovering what it means to live your truth, even when it's messy, when it unravels the plans you thought you had, and invites you to step into the unknown. Each week, we explore practices, stories, and conversations that illuminate the ways we find and follow our own path. This is a space to slow down, ask questions, and uncover what's been quietly waiting inside of you. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Truth Is. If you've been following along so far this season, you may have noticed a pattern, being that I've been really drawn to having conversations with people who've made meaningful and pretty significant change in their professional lives. I think, primarily it's because I needed to have those conversations for me, and it reflects where I am in my life. But I also really believe, and I've come to think a lot about how what we're up to in our careers is such a reflection for our relationships with ourselves in a deeper sense. I don't think it's just about jobs. I think we're in a collective moment where a lot of us are questioning what we've pursued, what we've built, what matters to us now, and how we come back home to ourselves and what matters the most to us. And that's why I'm so thrilled and genuinely grateful to welcome my friend and coach, Jennifer Swartley, to the podcast today. Jen is a career and reinvention coach who spent the better part of 2 decades in media and working at startups before shifting her focus to helping clients design their own lives and work on their own terms. Her work blends practicality with a deeper practice of presence with yourself, clearing the noise, reconnecting to your own truth, your own compass. And only from that reconnection with self can we take aligned action at a pace that's actually sustainable. Today, we'll explore her story, her methodology, and what she's seeing in this moment for so many of us. I wanted to intentionally bring her on today as a way to alchemize some of the conversations I've had so far and offer some shared reflections and tools for how we can navigate this moment with more clarity, confidence, and compassion. Let's get into our conversation. Welcome to The Truth Is, Jen. You came into my life at such an aligned moment, and I was reflecting on it over the weekend. We started as colleagues on this project together like a year and a half ago, and then naturally you became a friend and now coach that has helped guided me through this season of returning to myself and going through change. And so I'm so looking forward to talking to you about your work and your journey. But I thought it would be fun to start with, when you look at your life and your work right now, what is the season that you're in and what feels alive and true about it?
It's funny. You posed this to me this morning so that I could sit in meditation with it.
Yeah.
And it gave me the opportunity to, when I got the question, I was like, my mind said, oh, I'm in this season. I've been a little quiet for a while. I've been doing my work. I've been coaching. I've been doing these marketing projects. Oh, I'm ready to grow. I'm in growth mode. And so I started to be like, oh, I'm going to meditate on this season of growth and coming out to share my message more. And then I sat down and immediately my body was like, heck no, that is not where you're at. You are in slow, deliberate growth mode. So my head wants to be in fast, showy. I'm ready to share more and be on Instagram more and, build. And my body is like, we're building, but we're going to do it differently. And we're going to be slow and we're going to be deliberate. And so I'm in a season of really slowing down, really slowing down and getting present with what's right in front of me. I have a family. I have a lot of great coaching clients. I'm running a great coaching group. And I want to continue to do that work and I want to
Hmm.
grow my impact. But I think I want to do it in a way that feels really good in my body and that I can sustain for the rest of my life.
What is the practice that allows you to see that difference between what your head wants to say you're doing and what a deeper sense of who you are wants to say you're doing?
It is stillness. It's quiet. It's
Hmm.
shutting out the noise. I think I suffer from being curious about a lot of things. So taking in a lot of inputs and taking in a lot of information because I
Hmm.
love to learn. But sometimes that means that I'm shutting myself off from what's actually in here. And so
Yeah.
it's only in getting quiet. And so maybe turning off Instagram or the TV or whatever for some periods of time and sitting. And sometimes I sit and it's still just mental chatter. And sometimes even my mental chatter can sound like intuition. It's like, oh, very wise and can step into that voice. And it's been in the practice of also sitting and understanding what my body feels like when I
Yeah.
am calm, that I've been able to have a felt sense of, oh, that's the real me
Hmm.
versus that is my thinking in disguise of the real me because I've been programmed and just the way that I am is the mind can be a tricky thing. So it can often come in disguise and make itself feel like it's really giving me the sensible, clear path forward.
Yeah.
And I now can feel it more quickly now that I've had
The
more time in
distinction.
quiet. Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much we will get into about your work, but it feels right to say this now. What you said about getting rid of some of the noise. I feel like for me this season, I've had to confront that I could spend my life like taking in information and watching other people,
Yep.
whether it's manifest or regulate their nervous system or create something new or change their relationship with work and
Yep.
their romantic and personal life. I could like watch it all day, every day, and maybe even get the sense that I'm like doing it with them.
Totally.
But then, I've gone through real cycles of when the week quiets down, when the day quiets down, of feeling a come down from maybe the scientific way to describe it is like the dopamine hits of taking all of that in. And I feel like I sense this pattern of, wait, why on Friday evenings do I feel really alone and depressed from a week of being in that? And so I'm curious if you what your thoughts are about that. But I wanted to say that up front. It feels like that's been one of the big reckonings for me in my life, and that you've helped me stop and see the distinction of the input versus where I am underneath it all.
There is a lot of external noise. And I love the way you said that there's almost this fake sense of productivity and learning and like,
Right.
this is the work that I'm doing. And really, it's just a distraction from
Mm-hmm.
the work. And not to say there isn't a time and a place for learning and from hearing from other people who have wisdom and growing in that way. But I think that now we're just inundated with so many messages that it had to come to a space in my world where it was like, it's now just more confusing. Like I'm wrapped in these messages and I started to notice I'm also feeling really bad. Like
Yeah.
I'm comparing myself to this person. I'm looking at this person and I love what she's wearing and then the stories continue. I can never succeed till I look this way, till I dress this way, till I
Wake up at
have this thing.
4:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those stories just keep us stuck. And
Mm-hmm.
that stuckness is where I was able to sort of meet where's this resistance, this like fake thinking I'm moving forward, but actually it's pushing me back more than
Yeah.
I even knew it was. It reminds me when in the marketing world, when social media was taking off, it was like, oh, I have to be on social media for
Right.
work, right? And then that sort of like, I used work as a cover for why I was like scrolling at midnight. Oh, this is market research. I'm just
Right.
researching everything. But it wasn't market research. And, you know, if you think about building a great brand is being authentic and true to the essence of that brand and having something real and some depth there. If a brand just tries to be a copycat of what other brands are doing, usually that comes through.
And you
I
can
think
feel the difference.
right. And I think that's true in our personal lives as well. Like when you are able to come through as your most authentic self, people feel that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're coming through as a copycat of some books you've read and you're throwing up some quotes from, you know, different teachers, and that's all you have, that ends up being very shallow, and people poke right through that as not feeling very real.
And I think the thing that gets scary to me that I felt personally is I'm actually getting further from who I am. Like I'm losing who I am. It's a subtlety, and it takes.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
You did mention the chemical reaction that's
Right.
happening. So I think there is, you know, sometimes we give ourselves a lot of like, it's another way to beat ourselves up. But there is like, these technologies have been created in a way to capture our attention. And so there's this subtle dopamine release that is happening that is making us feel good about learning, about laughing, about all these things we're doing. And then they sort of mask the other chemical reactions that are happening, which is fear that I'm not enough, which is worry that I'm not, you know, this or that. And so those two things are happening at once in our body. And I think one really masks the other.
Yeah.
And it's not until that Friday night when you sit down on the couch and you sort of like the input is gone.
And I'm like, wait, I'm really sad.
And then you see what's under there, right? And it's like, gosh, I have this cocktail.
But then I feel shame about being sad. I shouldn't be sad. I'm doing,
A meditation teacher, I was just listening to, speaking of listening to teachers and doing that, but he was talking about the Buddhist philosophy of, it's the double arrow, I believe, that is this idea of like the event happens and that's one thing, but then it's the second arrow of that like layer of shame and guilt that happens that often I think is the bigger one we don't look at, and what ends up being the layer that prevents us from taking risks, making moves, going into action and like hearing what we really want. So I think that that's a pretty profound realization to like look at it.
Totally. And the last question I wanted to ask you, kind of to ground in the present moment, is, you know, I've told you part of the reason I felt so nudged to ask you on at this moment is it didn't surprise me that my first series of conversations for this season were about guests that have made big changes in their careers. I think it's what I needed to process in my own life. And it's become kind of the first arc of this season, really being a look at career as the source of truth and inquiry. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, you know, and then I'm looking forward to getting into your journey. Since I've been putting these conversations out there, I've been really moved by the outreach I've had where people from different chapters of my life have reached out and said, I'm in that too. Like I feel like a moment of questioning, reckoning, wondering where to go from here. And I'm curious to ask you, you know, it's probably folks in their 30s and 40s, plus or minus a few years on either end. Do you think that is a timeless human cycle or process or existential crisis, whatever you want to call it? Or do you think we're in a specific moment right now?
I think it's the combination of both. I think there is a natural inflection point where you start to build a life, you get wiser, you have a body of work experience behind you, you start to question like, how much do I need? Those things are all, I think, pretty natural.
Yeah.
And they happen at this sort of time in life or season in life. I don't think it's always age-based, but like wherever you are in that chapter of life. But then I also think we're at a moment, I think it started in the pandemic, of people pausing and feeling out of alignment. And then post that big pause where we saw sort of the Great Resignation, you end up then now with people, the economy sort of flipped, but we're still bombarded with like messages of all this corruption and greed and things that are going on. And so
Yeah.
you have more and more people trying to feel aligned with like, what is right for me? Like what aligns with my values? What feels good to me? And so I think you're seeing more people have that question. And then you've got the comparison trap of people are, showcasing that you can go out on your own and build this thing. And,
Right.
oh, I'm a founder. And, that sort of became very sexy. And so then it gives people more opportunity and options to question, like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do something else? But what's interesting is I have also found in a lot of the conversations where I thought I would speak to a banker or someone in media or marketing burnt out, that they would want to leave their jobs, that it wasn't necessarily an anti-corporate America. It was
Right.
more of I want to be at a company that values innovation. I want to be valued for my contribution. I'm being passed up for promotions, or there's something usually in relationship with a manager or with a colleague that is causing strife. Those things are happening more and more. And so people are then up against like, this doesn't feel fulfilling to me.
Yeah.
But it's not inherently like anti-corporation or anti-corporate America. I think it's people are feeling misaligned and questioning.
It's probably why a lot of folks are like, hey, who's this coach you're working with?
Yeah, I think that I often will deal with the question of what is next. And
Yeah.
so that question, people might think you have a point of view like, oh, everyone should leave their jobs, or like, I come to you when I'm ready to make that leap. I will tell you 9 times out of 10, the person actually stays in their position.
Yeah. Wild.
Because they feel more safe and secure in their own knowing, and they actually want to create time and space to really
Right.
understand if that move is right for them.
Right.
And so there's that period of like, don't create more chaos. And then in that chaos, try to find the answers. Let's use the stability we have right now to find those answers and to try to create a different relationship to work. Because until you heal the pattern inside of you,
Yeah.
you will just go and find another job and then repeat the pattern.
Totally.
Like it happens all the time. Happened to me.
Well, perfect jumping off point, because I feel like as I've gotten to know you, so much of what you now offer to your clients is from learned experience and experiential wisdom that you have journeying through your own career. And so I'd love to have you just take us back. The question is, what are the lessons you learned over those years? But whatever feels resonant to share about how you journeyed into your career and what those first couple decades were like for you.
Yeah. I moved from LA to New York to go to school. And then when I left NYU, I started in media. So I spent the first 15 years of my career. It looked very much like a traditional climbing the corporate ladder. Like I would get a big promotion, I would have a bigger team, I would make more money. And by all external factors, I was very successful. And by internal factors, I was successful as well. I was working at big companies like Condé Nast and Hearst and Meredith, and we would build these integrated marketing campaigns. And I loved the work. I worked 24/7, but I actually like genuinely loved what I did, was really excited about building out these programs and being creative. And it was only when I started to think like, how could I have more connection to where the decisions being made, the strategy is being decided, that I'd made a pivot from corporate America into more of a startup world. So then I spent a couple years in startups where I thought, okay, maybe some of the red tape wasn't making me move fast enough. I had played with some of that balance of like personal life and professional life. I'd finally met someone, got married. And then I thought, oh, startups are going to give me that like agency to do my own thing, to build the autonomy I wanted. And so I worked in tech and consumer goods, and I got to a place where I was what I thought at the pinnacle of my career. Like I was like, I am now running a brand in the health and wellness space.
Yeah.
I was building a consumer packaged good with like a celebrity founder. I was like, this is everything I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had a family. I felt really secure with the balance I had. I worked a ton, but I felt really good about like the balance I had created in our life. And, you know, it was a startup, so I was working 24/7. We were building out healthy snacks. So I would spend weekends in the grocery stores and I was sampling our snacks. I had a newborn at home, my second baby. And we were trying to grow. I got, you know, we were talking to the board of directors and we're like, okay, and our investors, we said, we need a new CEO that has more experience to help us grow. He comes in, I'm super excited about like, we're going into growth mode. And day one, he says to me, hey, I bring my CMO everywhere I go. So I hear you're really well loved, but it's just not going to work out. And that moment was like dagger to the heart. Like, this is everything I have invested my like life's work into. And I was like, I mean, filled with fear, doubt, worry, like, where am I going to find another job? What am I going to do? Resentment. I've sacrificed so much for you people. Like I have, you know, I got on that high horse of like, I have left my baby at home. And after some of that subsided, what I was left with was a questioning of, okay, why did you do those things? Why is work such a over-indexed aspect of your identity and your personality to the extent that, you know, you're making sacrifices, but like not just sacrificing time with family, sacrificing your health, your wellness, like those were things I was grappling with. And at that point, I was like, okay, if I go to a wellness company that's like mental health focused, like maybe they'll help me keep the boundary around my work and my personal life. Like I'll go there and they'll have to, you know, promote mental health and wellness and give us mental health days off. And we had unlimited wisdom money and there were so many great things. And I felt really good about bringing meditation out to more people. And so I landed a job in that space and found myself sort of hitting a pattern again of like overworking, trying to compensate for perhaps a product market fit that wasn't there in the consumer space at that time, and really turning on myself. Lots of self-doubt, like a total confidence crisis at that point. Like, what's wrong with me? I'm not a brand builder. I've been fired from this one company. I'm at this other company. And no matter how hard I work, I'm not seeing results. And at this point, I'm also getting really sick and I'm at a wellness company and I'm not well at all. But that actually was why I hired an executive coach. I hired one myself. Shout out to Coach Kathryn. And she helped me unpack some of those stories of like what work meant to me and what it meant in terms of my worthiness and some of the misconceptions like I'll never be successful or I'm not enough in this way or that way. And right as we're finishing our work and I'm imagining what's next for me, the pandemic hit. And so I felt like the pandemic for me was a moment of pure clarity. It was just like this forced clarity. While it was chaotic, I was home. A lot of those external factors, like going out with friends, client entertaining, working nights and weekends,
busyness.
like the busyness of life just went away.
Yeah.
Also, it was very clear, like now my kids are right in front of me. They're in preschool and first grade, and I'm in charge of their curriculum at school, as well as their homework and their social lives and all of that stuff and their emotional well-being. And the company's trying to pivot and we're trying to figure out what to do with the company. And so the worlds just collided for me, but I actually found it super clearing. And it did give me more time. And so I followed an inkling of that curiosity that had come from our coaching sessions, which was, God, I love this work. Like, this calls on my interest in professional and personal development. Like, it's emotionally sensitive. At times I thought, like, maybe I should have been a therapist. And I was like, I really love what we did. Would I be able to do that? And I got certified in coaching. I was able to use those nights and weekends that, my husband and I were both now home to follow that. And then I put it into action. I started working with women who were burnt out. Everyone was dealing with something very similar, asking those same questions. And I was really passionate about burnout and getting people more support at home and what that looked like in partnership and what it looked like with your corporation and how to set boundaries. And so that was a lot of the work I did. And that ended up affording me the ability to move my marketing work to more of a consultative marketing support. So I still take on marketing projects, hence how we met as colleagues. And then I use that to help me to grow the business in a way that I can do it. So I'm not putting all of that on my shoulders right now, that the two can sort of live in parallel. And that's felt really good.
I love what you said about when you were in that period during COVID, working with a coach for yourself, you had kind of this signal of, ooh, this work is really interesting to me. There was like a calling to it. I also want to reminisce for a moment on, you shared this with me over breakfast not too long ago, that you getting to New York to start that moment of your early in your career.
Yeah.
I think you've told me, and I'd love for you to retell it. When you got to New York, you were like, this is it. And so I think it's interesting to me that even a few decades from each other, you've had these different moments of clarity about different things. And maybe the way to ask this question, I'd love to go back to young Jen starting out and being like, New York is it.
Yep.
Looking back on that period of career, it was the right thing at the right time. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there is a synchronicity to life that things happen, opportunities come in front of you. And if you are clear enough to see the opportunity, you can act on it. So that's why I'm so diligent about we have to rid ourselves of so much of the noise or else we miss those opportunities. But there is, I don't want to say some luck in it in terms of do you actually meet the moment? Do you hear that calling? Do you then act on that calling? So the young Jen story is, I grew up in LA, had never been to New York. I'm from a middle-class family. My father was an Eastern European immigrant. We didn't have a ton of money. And I became, my senior year of high school, just laser focused on, I am going to move to New York. I don't know if it was watching Felicity. Again, I've never been.
Had you ever
here.
been? You'd never
I
been?
had never been. I had never traveled further than Las Vegas at that point. So
wow, that's as far east as you'd gone.
As I had gone, right? That was where my journey ended. And I thought wow, I'm on an airplane getting to Las Vegas at that point. So no, I had never been here. I sat my parents down. I said, I'm applying to NYU. They said, we don't think that's a good idea. I had always worked, so I used my money that I had to, they wouldn't even pay for the application. So I paid for the application to NYU. I make my way to New York. And I literally got off that airplane in Queens. You would have thought I was Mary Tyler Moore. I threw up my, just the energy of this place. And everyone laughs because they're like, you weren't even in New York City yet, Manhattan. You weren't in Manhattan yet. And I was like, I belong here. This is 1997. So I knew as soon as I just stepped foot here that I was going to live here and I would do anything it took to live here. And so that took a lot of coercing of my parents, and we took out loans and did all of those things. And I made the decision that I was going to move to New York. And then I got tested on that decision a year later, my dad passed away.
Mm.
And so I'm a freshman in college. And, to my mom's credit, she didn't say, like, you have to come back home. She was like, you should because it's the right decision. It's just more practical. We can't afford for you to stay at NYU. And my dad actually was a very hard worker. And so I did a little self reflection there and said, I know that he would want me to be happy and he would never want to have taken an opportunity away from me. And so I will do whatever it takes to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I paid for my schooling. I got a full-time job from my sophomore year to my senior year. I worked a second job in a restaurant. And it was a lot of those little synchronicities, like making that decision, working really hard to stay here, that built my foundation. And actually, the woman I had been babysitting for owned a small magazine. And so she gave me a full-time job at her magazine, which was what gave me the experience to get my first job at Condé Nast. Like, there were little things that it's like when you do follow that inner calling and that knowing, I
Yeah.
do think the world opens up for you and hands you these little breadcrumbs of like, all right, we're going to make it just a little bit. I won't say that time in my life was easy,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll make it just a little bit easy. Like, there's this woman who works at this magazine. She has a job. She let me stay with her family rent free. And even more of a spiritual opening, I had actually been with her while her husband passed away and
Mm.
helped her with her children for the year before my dad died. So there was a lot there that I had like,
Wow.
wow, I just was fed this master class on
Yeah.
children grieving their parents' death. Oh, now I get to go
And
through
now
it.
you're a child grieving
And
your
now I'm a
parents.
child grieving.
Wow.
And so I only say those things because it's like, what are the chances?
Yeah.
Like, and it is part of what gives me that feeling of trust and certainty that, like, I will figure this out. If I keep tuning in, something bigger will open for me, but it requires me to be in alignment. It requires me to be listening.
Mm-hmm.
It requires me to then take action when I am nudged to that action. Um, and then stuff unfolds.
You sharing that, which it's such a gift for you to share that truly. All of a sudden, your work ethic means so much more. And I would imagine that it shifts you into like great compassion and reverence for where your work ethic comes from.
Yes, yes. And when I was doing some of the unpacking of like, gosh, why does my work consume so much of my time and energy?
Yeah.
And why do I put so much meaning around it? I wrote this article on LinkedIn about my dad's passing, and I said, I felt the greatest gift he gave me was my work ethic. But actually, what I think the greatest gift he gave me is that he died when he was 57. I don't take a day for granted.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's next. So if you don't take that action, you don't do that thing, like, you're not promised that next day. So he worked his whole life and put off a lot himself to say, like, I'm providing for my family, I'm doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't get to see the reward of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so being present in my life in a way to like actually enjoy the fruits of my labor
Yeah.
is very, very important to me.
It gives it a deeper and higher purpose.
Yeah.
And so, to bring us to a little bit the work you do now, what do you say to the woman or individual that is in the thick of it and the first reaction is, that's not realistic for me. I don't have space for that.
Say to her that you have to make that space and you don't need it to be some huge thing. I think we
Yeah.
all think that, I felt this way, like, oh, meditation, journal, like, oh, really nice to have. Like, I do not have time for that crap. Like, no way can I take that on. And I think you don't have time to not do it because one, it
Mm-hmm.
saves you a lot of time in
Right.
terms of like having more clarity, going a little bit slower, makes me actually make better decisions and move faster towards the end goals. So you have to take that time and do it in the smallest way possible that feels good to you. So
Right.
don't do it in a way that's like, I now am going to have shame and guilt that I'm not making the time, or I'm going to beat myself up for not making it. Do it in a way that feels good, that you carve out like a micro moment of, okay, what is that breath I take before I walk in the door? What is, I don't jump up and start serving others through my email and through my kids and through that. Like, I lay in bed for just 2 more beats to ask myself, like, meet myself this morning and say, what do you need today? How are you feeling? Like, check in on yourself. Those little things will shift much bigger things in your life, because it's just reorienting yourself within for a little bit longer so that you can meet the outside world with more alignment and integrity.
How do you approach your work as a coach? And yeah, how do you describe to someone that's new to your work or working with a coach what your hope is and what your mission is to be able to offer to people?
I would say that a lot of where I focus is bringing more clarity and confidence to you making decisions about your life. And in order to have more clarity, it's that first part, you have to eliminate some of the noise. And so some of that is, tactical stuff like boundaries around media and news and things like that. And some of it is like deeper stuff. Like, so some of the noise is stories we tell ourselves, or, my parents said I should do this, or my uncle keeps commenting on that. And really meeting some of those stories and then debunking them. You and I did some of the work by Byron Katie, where it's like going through that process too. And that's the noise elimination piece of it. It's like taking the shoulds out of it, taking some of that distraction away. And then once we do that work, we ground into a felt sense of like, what is true and real to me? I'm really curious right now about like internal family systems, the work by Dick Schwartz, and like the true self is at the center. And how does that feel as opposed to the parts that come up in us, like our perfectionist or our people pleaser or, the worry wart? Like, how does that true self actually feel? And can we connect with that essence? And so then once we get connected, and some of that involves like breath work, grounding, being out in nature, doing more to really get to know what emotions feel like in your body and where they live, and some of that stored emotion. And then it's only until then do we get to the dreaming part where it's like, now let's start to envision. Now let's start to feel that inspiration. And we don't have to build this big, gigantic, jump off a cliff vision. It could be a small micro adjustment. It could be, I want to do this volunteering work on the side. It could be, I want to take on this project at work, or I want to step into that promotion, or I want to not manage people because the management is really zapping me of my energy. But it's only until we've silenced things and got you grounded that we're able to even understand if that dreaming and the visioning is true to you or is just more noise.
What you just referenced feels like a really concrete example of the work and play.
Yeah.
And you've showed me that it takes work and it takes commitment and it doesn't just happen. And I think about the example of us working together over the last few months where, I got clear on wanting to build this podcast, and I knew that I would do work as a consultant and figure out what that looked like to support this path. And there was one day where we had a call where I was like, I think I should apply to this job. And you were like, do you want? You're like, or you said, how does it make you feel when you consider applying to that job?
Right.
And I said, I don't know, and then we grounded. And then you guided me to imagining what I actually wanted to offer to people with my skills outside of the frame of, I need this type of job to support myself.
Yeah.
And then we were able to get to this possibility of you offered like, and do you see how that could lead? Like if you offered a workshop being one of the things I wanted to create, you see how that could lead to value creation and income possibility.
Right.
And as I think about that hour together, how it shifted my reality for what was possible for me. I think it's a really concrete example of like, what does this actually look like? And I don't know, I think it relates to, I'm a yoga practitioner for a long time, and I'm always relearning the lesson that it is in and through the felt experience that something becomes possible. And I feel like a lot of the impact you've had on me is discerning the difference from the fear intellect and feeling into something that's more honest and more real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I like to do is meet people where they are. And I always say this, like, I'm a realist in the sense of there are people that stay in the weeds and are very tactical in their coaching approach. There are people that are so far out there that it's super inspirational, but it's like, but what am I supposed to do? And then I beat myself up because I don't feel that way, or I bypass difficult emotions in order to try to level up to that space.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's through those emotions that we actually find some clearing, and we do it. That's where like the slowness and the compassion and meeting yourself where you are, so that like you can say like, gosh, I'm really afraid. And once we name that and we understand that it's the fear that's driving that, I'm looking for stability. I want something that feels more like a return, and I'm afraid of these things happening. Then we can clear some of that out to say like, okay, let's imagine things that are more in alignment with what you really want. And as you work with a client, it's like understanding, sometimes I can see the light in you that you maybe are not seeing at that moment in time, and I get to reflect that back to you. So like knowing what your superpowers are, knowing your inherent strengths, knowing where you can be of service, like I can help reflect that in places where you might lose sight of it.
For those that are curious about these examples and what this work looks like, the one other example that I'd love to reference that just happened like last week, I'm getting used to what it feels like to now put content out there with this podcast. And I, for years, just like how we met, built brands in corporate spaces. And it's so different to now be building one on my own and want to hold integrity and grounding for like what I want this to be. And I saw myself, or you, I think, saw it much more clearly than I did, getting really pulled into how do I write this marketing caption so that no one will be ruffled by it. And I was getting into like this people pleasing diplomatic thing. And I didn't expect it. We get on the call. I was like, I know I need to meet with you. And it's just, I don't feel like, I felt really all over the place. And I think it relates to the internal family systems work that we were doing. But you had me stop and breathe. And you asked me questions about what I was feeling. And I was able to identify fear. You asked me about who I was envisioning seeing it. And I was like a distant relative and an old boss. And then you had me talk to that part of me that was scared, and I could feel its relationship to an old fear, probably me feeling foolish as a little girl or something. And then I cried a little, and I felt that leave my body. And it was probably the most clear example to me of how it can all connect and hold us back. And I wanted to talk through that example because I didn't want to put you on the spot of, I was like, I'm happy to overshare. But it was so miraculous to me, the shift.
I think, thank you for sharing that, because it is sometimes hard to articulate what this work actually feels like, and why I really think it's so necessary. But There is so much of what you described. Like there was an old story that was living within you, and that fear comes up. And so we end up sitting in front of a boss and
Mm-hmm.
we're wondering why we can't articulate something, or we're not making the presentation, or we're not getting the promotion. And it's like there are these aspects of us that are coming up that we're not dealing with, and we're just suppressing and numbing and pushing aside. And we keep, to your point, keep trying to white knuckle, like I'll just show up, I'll get up earlier, I'll drink more
Yeah.
coffee, I'll read more, I'll get smarter, I'll learn this skill. And it's like, actually, if you could just eliminate some of that, you have so much wisdom inside of you. That
Mm.
sort of that centered true self that's in alignment, like they know the way forward. They are way smarter than most of us. So we add so much to the mix that gets in the way of us actually seeing the path. And when I'm able to connect with a person, and it's only through, a built relationship and feeling safe and trusting one another, that you can share to that level where it's like we can get vulnerable and say like, gosh, there's something living in here that is keeping me stuck. And once I see it, and don't
Mm-hmm.
just push it away and say that's silly or stupid, but actually
Mm-hmm.
sit with it and say like, gosh, wow, like I can see why you'd be scared. I can see why it's scary to put your voice out there and put your creative work out into this world. The
Yeah.
world can be scary, but when you can see that, you can also access another part of you that is like, no, it's okay. We can do this. And then you feel integrated and whole enough to share. And I think that's powerful. And I think more people would shine their light in this world in all sorts of different environments, at work and at home,
Mm-hmm.
if they would actually do the work to connect inside.
Made me think you've taught me a lot about safety and what
Mm-hmm.
safety actually feels like. I feel like it's a term that's thrown around a lot. It's real
Yeah.
easy for someone to say, this is a safe space.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it?
It's been,
Okay. A proclaimed safe space.
yeah.
And you've been with me in moments where you've given me safety in environments that I didn't. And it's interesting to think about what you just said. The safety to come back to yourself and meet yourself. I think about even just my creative journey. There was a time where, and it still shows up, where I'm like, who am I to have a podcast? Like, that's crazy. And then as I get safe in this experience of having a podcast, who am I to be an actor? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who am I to want to write a play? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I think those thoughts come up.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It reframes it as kind of this fun, welcome, joyful even journey to befriend and interrogate those thoughts, because as you're helping me see, they're connected to who I really am and what I really have to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a teacher has told me at one point, like if the desire lives within you, it's for you. Like
Yeah.
if you can connect to that desire within, and to your point, there is a feeling of like safety that is necessary for us to even dream. One of my biggest learnings as of late is how many people out there don't feel okay to even dream. And that could be from the financial realities of their situation,
Yep.
or the overwork, or the burden that they have, or systemic oppression. But there's some sense of like, I need to find that safety and create that grounding to then be able to dream. And so that upfront work we talked about, like almost spending more time on that now with people
Right.
before we get into the visioning and stuff. Because if you fast forward to the visioning and the desire, then I was finding people actually berating themselves for not having the dream, for not knowing their desires, or not even knowing what they wanted.
Yep.
And so creating that internal safety is really, really important. And to your point, the word gets bastardized. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not about having a safe space and, creating, I don't know, all these silly things that corporations think they need to do. But it's about actually people feeling that they can express themselves, they can tell you their wants and their needs, and there aren't repercussions to it, that there is communication, that there's a two-way dialogue. Like those things create safety and stability,
Yeah.
and actually create innovation.
Yeah. It feels important to say too. You've guided me and offered things to me, and also I have been the one to make the choices. And
Yes.
the example I'll share is I know this about myself. This chapter of choosing change and choosing to reinvent my career, it obviously really brought finances into focus, and it forced me in a good way to confront my relationship with money. And what's interesting to me is I have now reinvested savings that I was not going to touch into this chapter in a way I don't think I had the safety inside myself to believe was a smart move. And it's interesting to just look back on that safety has given me more confidence in an appetite for risk that doesn't feel like a jump off of a cliff. It's felt like small degree steps that I'm reevaluating with you and on my own as I go. But it's interesting to think about that relationship between establishing safety inside of yourself with the support, and then almost it like establishes that you have more autonomy over your own choices.
Yes. I think one of the things is actually mirroring back to people that you have more agency and power in your life in general. Like
Yeah.
you get to choose how you show up. You get to choose if you answer that email, when you answer the email, et cetera. And I know often it doesn't feel that way because it's like, well, I can't just not go to the meeting or I'll be fired if this happens. As we do little things where we play with boundaries, people realize like, oh, actually nothing really shifted or changed. I was able to say no to that. I was able to do that. And when we learn about true agency and power, you get to make decisions where it's like, okay, I'm going to take some of the like noise out, which is like maybe emotional chatter and fear. And I'm going to look at my finances in a more neutral way. Or I'm going to look at my job in a more neutral way where I say like, okay, what's my relationship to this exchange? A job is an exchange. I
Yeah.
go in, I give them this service. This is what I'm expected to do. And they give me money in exchange for that and maybe some benefits. Like that neutrality of looking at a situation where you've cleared away some of the like fear and judgment and shame and whatever, and just say, okay, here's what my savings account looks like. Here's what I'm comfortable investing. Here's what I'm not comfortable investing. Here's the timeline in which I need to see some form of a return. Or here's the, plan B. Like
Yeah.
those things are safe to take those risks when you've stripped it of like all this other noise around it. And it's also why, this is sort of an aside, I would never tell someone you should leave or you should go, because there is that internal knowing of like, what appetite for risk do you have? Like just
Yeah.
in your own nervous system, let alone in your financial situation. Like for some people that does not feel good. They're not going to make good choices. They're not going to be able to shine their light out there and expand if they feel like they're under attack. So they might need the stable base of a 9-to-5 job to allow them to do something more elsewhere. So it's different for everyone, and I don't think there's sort of like one answer where it's like
Yeah.
everyone should go off and pursue their passion in this way or that way. I think you really have to know yourself in order to take a risk like that.
Because you're so rooted in practicality, meeting this emotional, spiritual work,
Yep.
how do you navigate and advise navigation of, I think we're all aware that there's a lot of systems that are not built to benefit everyone, and everyone
Yep.
has had good bosses and bad bosses and good work experiences and bad work experiences. Is there a limit to when it's time to walk away from a place?
Yeah, for sure. There's there are certain things where I'll tell someone, set the boundary with your boss in this way. And like, if you do it with assertiveness and you do it, knowing that the work can get done and the project can move forward and it's neutral, you're not all charged when you go to do it, they will tell you their answer back.
Yeah.
And that gives you information. And that information feeds the system in which you can decide, like, okay, this is a good fit for me, or this is not a good fit for me. Like,
Right.
I am willing to tolerate this, or I'm not. And I'll give a tangible example. I was working with a boss in one of the startups where I was like, oh gosh, I didn't exactly know what we were supposed to do from a marketing perspective to grow the brand. And so I was like throwing spaghetti at the walls. I was doing all the things that we were supposed to be doing, and they weren't hitting the returns. And so, like, I got more and more energetically, like, wobbly. Like, I don't
Yeah.
exactly know what's going on. And it was only in hindsight that I realized, like, that wobble was part of what didn't make him feel safe, that I knew the answers of how to grow the business. So that actually activated his fear. And then his fear manifested in aggressive behavior and, micromanaging and things of that nature. And it was that little energetic dance that put us in sort of this back and forth exchange that I didn't know how to navigate at the time.
Right.
And I think if I was able to ground myself better and say, like, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, here's what I'm trying to do, here's what's not working, and let's look at this picture holistically of what's not working. Is it this mark? And it wasn't so personal that I was failing.
Yeah.
Then we could have maybe had a better business discussion. I wouldn't have activated that fear in him. He could have maybe stepped up in his leadership style. And I'm not saying, like, everyone, you have to be personally responsible. Like, some bosses are abusive and terrible, and some environments are not great. But, like, you only really can judge that once you've gotten clear. And then when you see it with clear eyes, it actually becomes very quick to say, I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
this does not work for me. Obviously, then you have to look at what your other choices are, but you can make a better decision, I think.
Right. That personal clarity is always accessible, even
Yes.
if it means do it on the weekends or something like that.
Totally.
So what is coming up for you in your business, in your coaching practice? Those that are listening, how can they get in touch with you and look out for what you're up to?
I am just wrapping one of the first groups of What's Next, and still doing one-on-one coaching with mainly VP director level folks that are in an environment they're trying to figure out what that next chapter looks like for them, either within their company or making a big pivot. And I plan to run more of those groups coming in the new year, because I'm learning a lot about how necessary this work is, and how important it is. And holding that space, I think, has really been it's been a great experience for me and for the people who are participating in it. So look out for more of those groups come January. You can follow me on Instagram at Jen Swartley with one N. And I'm also at jenniferswartley.com, where you can find, information about different workshops I'll offer, or the group, or just reach out and set up a call. I'd love to chat.
Should we bring it home with some fun ones?
Sure.
Some quick hitters?
Yeah.
All right. If you could leave listeners with one truth about navigating change or reclaiming agency, what would it be?
You have more power than you give yourself credit for. You have so much wisdom inside of you and such a bright light inside of you. And I hope that you are able to let that shine for the whole world to see.
Fill in the blank. I used to think blank, and now I know blank.
I used to think that the answer lived outside of me, and now I know that all the answers live right in here.
Boom. What would your 8-year-old self say to you today?
Oh, God. I am a big fan of like inner child meditations. So I connect with her quite often. um, and she would say, wow, you're living a dream I didn't even imagine we could dream. And thank you. Thank you for doing the hard work. And thank you for making the hard decisions. And thank you for continuing to return to yourself.
What would your 80-year-old self say to you?
You did good, girl. You did good. I'm so proud of you. And you took some turns that maybe didn't look right from the outside, but you always followed your heart and you always led with what you felt was right. And look where it got you. Look where it got you.
What is a ritual or a practice that keeps you?
A simple return to self, whatever that looks like for me, whether that is a hand on my heart, whether that is one breath in, or whether that's a 20-minute sit, is just anything that gets me to return back to myself is the most important thing to me.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. This was such a pleasure. You've created such a beautiful space for these conversations to be had, and it's a gift to the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. You have more power than you give yourself credit for. That's Jen's message, and I hope one that stays with you. Her story reminds us that slowing down isn't about doing less. It's about doing what's true and what's right and what's aligned. So whether you're in a season of questioning or creating or staying the course, may this conversation be a reminder that your clarity comes from within and you can build your life at your own pace. I'm calling myself out right now to say that I screenshot probably 80 things a day that I see on the internet that I think are going to help me get to where I want to go. And yeah, maybe there's a time and place for those points of inspiration, but I'm in the practice and the experiment of doing less and letting go of what I don't need so that I can actually hear what is aligned and right from my own compass. I think that's when things can get really fun and interesting, when we get in the driver's seat of our own lives and start to trust where we want to go. You can learn more about Jen's work and her What's Next coaching groups at jenniferswartley.com or on Instagram at Jen Swartley. I'll share all of those links in the show notes. Jen, thank you for being both a guide and a mirror and a friend, not just for me, but for everyone listening who's realizing that real change starts with returning to themselves. Thank you all for listening. I will see you soon. I hope you leave this episode with something that stays with you, a question worth holding or an insight worth following. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone you'd like to invite into the conversation. You can also follow along at The Truth Is Podcast. A special thank you to the people who make this show possible: editing by Dan Kroll, music by Will Savino, visual identity by Sarah Gaynor and Jonathan Bush, and guidance from my friend and advisor, Natalie Tulloch. I'm Kathryn Flashner. Thank you for listening to The Truth Is.